What's up, guys? Vaughn here with Unlimited Freedom, and today we're going to be talking about scams. We're going to be talking about what a scam is, and we're going to go over the 10 biggest scams in recent history, okay? And so we'll kind of crack into it a little bit just so that, you know, we can all be on the same page when we're talking about this, because have you ever noticed that, like, people, sometimes they just argue to argue, right? I've seen so many comments, guys, that are just, it's just like factually incorrect. It's like, are you just making this stuff up? And scam is like the go-to word when you don't understand something, or when you just want to discredit a company, or you want to discredit a person. It's scam alert, right? In fact, some people are so scared of scams that they can hardly get any type of business done at all, especially if it's over the phone, online, you know, things of that nature. And they just, you know, it's funny how we as a culture, we trust certain things without questioning it, right? Like going online to your local bank or whatever, your local credit union. You don't question any of the stuff that they ask you to do. Or, you know, when you go and you're filling out an application for like car insurance or something like that. But those same processes, when it's with a company that you have never heard of, or, you know, something that you're just looking into, you know, it can throw some people off. So basically just want to kind of go over that a little bit. And let me get into the definition first, right? The Oxford Dictionary, it defines scam as this, right? And listen to this. This is interesting. A clever and dishonest plan for making money. Simple, right? A clever and dishonest plan for making money. Okay, that's how the Oxford Dictionary describes scam. Now, the thing that jumps out to me right away about this is that a clever and dishonest plan for making money sounds like most businesses, right? I've been in a lot of different businesses in my life, and they all are clever, and most of them, frankly, are dishonest, right? When it just comes down to it. Now, that might be a tough pill for some people to swallow. But if you're going by this Oxford definition, you could say a lot of things are a scam. You could say that your car insurance is a scam. You could say that your ADT protection for your home is a scam. You could say that your cable is a scam. You could say that your internet is a scam, right? Because they all use these same types of business practices where you like bundle and save, and you know, things of that nature. They have these kind of misleading advertisements on TV. Medicare, right? Medicare companies, big scam, right? Now, so what I'm saying with that is that based on this definition, you can see how people throw the word scam around a lot, and it loses its power when you recognize that that's a pretty broad definition, guys. I mean, by a dishonest plan and a clever dishonest plan for making money. Well, you could say that the government is a scam, right? You could say that the people in power are all scammers, because they're clever, and let's face it, most of the time they're dishonest, right? They're not telling you the whole truth. So there's a clever and dishonest plan, and they're making money, they're profiting. You know, but yet you don't throw up a red flag when you pay your taxes. So, guys, we just have to understand that we need to be armed with the truth, and we need to be armed with facts when we go in and look at new companies, especially investment opportunities. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, right? This is not financial advice, and I'm not your financial advisor, okay? I'm just a guy here telling you about my story, sharing a lot of different platforms with you that I'm involved in, and the links are all in the description, okay? So, having said that, if you're interested in any of the platforms that I talk about, feel free to click the links in the description. I'm not going to go into a lot of platforms on this video, because I really just want to kind of get into this scam definition, what is a scam, and go through some of the top scams in history. So we're going to go through this. Shout out to unbelievablefacts.com is where I'm getting this information. And yeah, so let's crack into it. Number one, okay. In 1996, a Canadian mining company, Bre-X, announced a huge discovery of gold. And in the process went from a penny stock to $280 per share with a total value of $4 billion. That's billion with a B. Okay, in reality, it was all fraud, and listen to this, the lead geologist was shaving off gold from his wedding band to add to drill core samples. So they were taking samples of the mine, and this guy was shaving gold off of his wedding band to make it look like they had struck huge gold. The stock shot up to the tune of $4 billion. So this was during the late 1990s. This guy's name was John Fettelhoff. He believed that a property near the Busang River in Indonesia would produce gold after mining, right? At his advice, David Walsh, the founder of BRIEX Minerals Ltd., bought the property. The project manager of the gold mining project was Filipino geologist Michael de Guzman. When de Guzman tested initial samples, he didn't find any trace of gold. So what did he do? He shaved off some gold from his wedding band, added it to the samples, and declared the first estimate of the total find to be about 62 metric tons of gold, when actually there was zilch. The news of the presence of gold in BRIEX's property soon spread like wildfire. The company claimed that it was going to be the richest gold mine ever discovered. Mining investors rushed to invest, and the stock price of BRIEX started climbing, and it rose from pennies to $280 per share. Michael de Guzman kept on salting the samples, and that's the term when you're meddling with it, you're changing it. It's the term's called salting the samples, and that worked until 1997. In 1997, the Indonesian government got involved, and from February 1997, the evaluation of the site began. In March 1997, de Guzman committed suicide by jumping from a helicopter. BRIEX and its mine's reputation started going downhill from then on. On March 26, 1997, an American firm announced that its core sample collected from Busang contains a negligible amount of gold. As a result, the Indonesian government postponed signing the mining deal with BRIEX. Stock prices began to fall, and thousands of investors lost billions. TSE and NASDAQ suspended trading of BRIEX stock, and it went bankrupt on November 5th, 1997. Do you trust the stock market? Well, this scam goes to show you that not everybody who's listed on the stock market is actually legit. And people have lost billions, and they will continue to lose billions in the stock market, right? So what is my point? Once again, anything can be called a scam. And you need to be aware of that. So when somebody says, oh, don't sign up for that, that's a scam. Do your own research. Do your own diligent research. Make your own decisions. You can watch my channel. There's a ton of other channels out there. There's people with all kinds of diverse opinions. Basically, at the end of the day, you research it. You find out what's factually true and what's not. And then you determine if you're going to move forward with that company. Guys, take your power back. Don't just let somebody say the word scam and scare you away from something, right? Especially when it could be profitable and it could be a real great opportunity for you that you just missed because you're closed off, right? You're just closed off because you're not willing to do your own research. You're not willing to really look into it for yourself, make your own decision, make your own conclusion, right? Self-reliance, right? And we've got to get back to that, guys. Number 2. Okay, founded in 1985, the Enron Corporation claimed revenues of nearly $101 billion during 2000 and employed approximately 20,000 staff. But the real value of the company was exposed at the end of 2001, after which the company was declared bankrupt. Enron was responsible for wiping out over $78 billion in stock market value. Once again, connected to the stock market. Doesn't necessarily mean it's on the up and up, right? Just because it has a ticker, that doesn't mean anything. You still got to do your research, still do your diligence, right? $78 billion lost. The American company Enron came into focus after 1996 when it began reporting a steady increase in its sales each succeeding year. Okay, from 1996 to 2000, the sales of Enron was reported to increase from $13.3 billion to a staggering $100.8 billion. Okay, it was declared as America's most innovative company by Fortune magazine for 6 consecutive years. Made the cover of Fortune magazine. Okay, by the end of 2001, the actual financial condition of Enron was revealed. The report stated its accounting fraud, also known as the Enron scandal, and the company filed for bankruptcy in 2001. The Enron scandal revealed the loopholes in accounting rules in America. The company used to book revenue from huge energy derivative contracts at their gross value instead of their net value. Okay, pay attention here. It would put together a seller with a prospective buyer and take delivery of the contract. Then it would book the entire sale as its own revenue. This was made possible due to a loophole in the procedures approved by the Financial Accounting Standards Board, FASB. According to the board, each company had a free option as to how to account for the deals of energy contracts. So, let me translate that for you real quick, guys. Basically, what that is saying is that this company discovered a loophole in the law, and they exploited it, they capitalized on it to the tune of billions and billions of dollars, and then the feds came in and shut them down, right? So here's the thing about laws and the rich, right? And shout out to Robert Kiyosaki. He wrote the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's where I got this from. And what it is this. The rich are always going to figure out a way to get around the law. They're always going to find a loophole. They're always going to find a way to keep their money. It doesn't matter how many laws you make, how many laws you pass. The rich are going to figure out a way to keep their money. Because they're going to pay the high-paid lawyers. They're going to find the loophole. They're going to do the thing. That's what happened with this Enron, right? Let's get into number 3, right? This is in 1821. Okay, a Scotsman, Gregor MacGregor, invented a fictional Central American republic, right? This guy invented a country, okay? You can't make this stuff up, man. And he called it Poyais, okay? So he invented a company, not a company, excuse me, a country, called it Poyais, and convinced hundreds of people in his home country of Scotland to invest in the non-existent country, and even oversaw the deployment of a ship of 250 people hoping to start a new life in Poyais. So this guy actually oversaw the deployment of a ship with 250 human souls, real people, got on this ship and went to this fictional country of Poyais. When their ship arrived, they found nothing but undeveloped, inhospitable jungle. Gregor MacGregor was born in 1786 in Glengyle, Scotland. He carved out a place for himself in history by pulling off one of the biggest frauds of the early 19th century, and he gained over 200,000 pounds in the process. Now, keep in mind, this was in the 1800s, right? The early 1800s. So 200,000 pounds was a lot, right? I can't do the calculation right now, but it would probably be over $1 million in today's money, maybe over 10 million. So, in the early 1820s, MacGregor invented an entirely fictional country, named it Poyais. He claimed it was located near the Black River in what is now present-day Honduras. Okay, MacGregor claimed that Poyais covered 8 million acres, and he was the prince of this land. He also claimed that the land was rich in natural resources, but required manpower to turn it into a developed country. MacGregor began an aggressive campaign to make people believe in his fictional country. He printed advertisements and leaflets and gave interviews in national newspapers. He even had Poyais-related ballads composed and sung. This guy wrote a national anthem for his fake country. In mid-1822, a 355-page Poyais guidebook was being sold in London and Edinburgh, which contained elaborate maps and details about the fictional country. The official-looking book convinced many people, of course, why wouldn't it, and started buying Polynesian land certificates. By early 1823, about 500 people had bought Polynesian land. After that, MacGregor began making arrangements to send interested people to Poyais. On 10 December 1822, a vessel with 70 immigrants on board sailed towards the non-existent country. Later, on 22 January 1823, another vessel sailed with almost 200 immigrants aboard. Upon reaching the land which they believed to be Poyais, the immigrants realized they had been duped. Few travelers were able to return, and most of them died due to diseases like yellow fever and malaria. Well, that guy was on some demon time to do that to people. Okay? Not very funny at all when you see the cost of human life. In the 1990s, this is number 4, and this is who other than Charles Ponzi, right? Charles Ponzi. The infamous Italian criminal Charles Ponzi scammed investors out of about $7 million by passing on new investors' money to existing investors and presenting it as a sustainable investment. That's where we got the term Ponzi scheme, right? And so basically a Ponzi scheme, and I've talked about this on other videos, but it's real simple. You invest money with me, right? You invest $100, and I say that it's going to grow, you know, whatever, 1%, and, you know, let's say 1% a day, your $100. And so, you know, you're tracking that, the 1% growth, and in the meantime, other people are sending me $100, $100, $100, $100, $100. So when one person cashes out their supposed growth that I've supposedly been investing and growing, I just snatch it out of the money that I've already acquired with this large pool of money. Now, what happens to a Ponzi scheme is once enough people start trying to draw their money out all at once, the whole thing collapses, right? And that should be very interesting to people who are following other stories on this channel, okay? So, in the summer of 1919, Charles Ponzi was living in Boston. The idea for a scam began forming in his mind when he received a letter from a Spanish company. The letter contained an international reply coupon, or an IRC. This coupon could be redeemed by the recipient for postage to the sender's country. Ponzi realized that he can buy the coupon in one country and then exchange them for postage in another country with a higher value of postage. Soon he set his plan into motion, but he required a large amount of capital to buy the IRCs with cheap European currencies. To raise the money, he went to his friends and promised them double returns in 90 days. Okay, some people invested and they got the interest as promised, right? In January 1920, Ponzi opened his own company to promote this scheme. In the beginning, 18 people invested. They got the promised interest the next month. As word spread about this unbelievable scheme, investments started pouring in. So this guy was racking in the investment money. By June 1920, the net total investment in Ponzi scheme rose to $2.5 million. People began mortgaging their homes and even invested their life savings into the scheme. What does that remind you of? But no one realized that Charles Ponzi was paying the earlier investors with the money invested by the new investors, right? That's the whole scam. Ponzi's rapid rise drew suspicions, and his publicity agent found incriminating documents related to the scam. The agent wrote an article for the Boston Post, which brought Ponzi's scam into public view. From then on, things went downhill for Charles Ponzi. His investors lost about $20 million, and in November 1920, Ponzi was sentenced to 5 years in prison. That was, he probably didn't do all 5, guys. He probably did like 3.5 or 4 years for that whole thing. And he raked in all those millions and millions of dollars. Wow. So this guy's agent, his publicist, found out about this and stabbed him in the back. Right? Hey, there's no honor amongst thieves. Right? There's no honor amongst thieves. So, number 5, guys. After buying the financial institution Lincoln Savings and Loan Association, Charles Keating began investing savers' cash in high-risk ventures without informing the depositors. Right? So that's another thing. The scam was revealed in 1989 after the business failed, leaving thousands of elderly investors with worthless bonds. So this guy was selling, quote-unquote, safe bonds, right? And he was in the bond market. But instead of actually producing the bonds for the clients, he was taking their money and doing other things with it, right? So he was taking the money that came in and he was making very, very risky investments and in most cases losing the money. So then in turn, the people who invested in this guy's bonds also lost their money. Charles H. Keating was a champion swimmer, activist, lawyer, banker, and real estate developer. But the thing he is most known for is his role in the savings and loan scandal of the late 1980s. Charles Keating became the head of Lincoln Savings and Loan Association in 1984. Immediately after joining the enterprise, he fired the existing management. During those times, there were quite loose restrictions on banking investments. So, you know, once again, a lot of these laws come onto the books to try to fight this stuff, but people are always going to figure out a new way to get around these laws. Okay, taking advantage of this opportunity, Keaton began investing depositors' money in high-risk investments. For the next 4 years, Lincoln's assets increased. It rose from $1.1 billion to $5.5 billion. In 1989, Lincoln Savings parent company American Continental Corporation went bankrupt. The day after American Continental Corporation went bankrupt, federal authorities seized Lincoln Savings. The scam left 23,000 customers with worthless bonds. Now, here's another interesting thing that we should touch on with this number 5, the biggest scam in number 5 out of the 5 biggest scams in history. Federal authorities seized Lincoln Savings. Guys, the feds can come in and freeze your account. They can come in and freeze your savings. They can come in and do whatever they want. They're the feds, right? There's a great book, classic book called Catch-22. And the whole thesis, it's a totally funny book. It's entertaining. It's awesome. If you're into novels, if you're into fiction, get Catch-22 and read it. But the basic thesis behind it is that those in power are going to do what they want. And then the law comes after. So they do what they want, and then they make a law to justify what they did. Right? So one of the reasons why cryptocurrency is so popular is because it's harder for the government to come in and seize it and freeze it and manipulate it, right? Not that they can't do it and not that they aren't doing it. It's just harder because it's tied to the blockchain, which is tied to the World Wide Web, right? So it's much, much easier for the feds to come in and freeze your bank account than it is for them to get a hold of all of your cryptocurrency. Number 6. In 1925, a Portuguese named Alves dos Reis forged a government contract authorizing him to print money and officially printed himself 100 million escudos, the equivalent of 0.88% of Portugal's GDP at the time, which GDP stands for Gross Domestic Product. Okay, at that time, leading to the Portuguese banknote crisis. So this guy figured out a way to print his own money. Let's look at how he did it. In 1924, Alves dos Rios was in jail for embezzling money from a company. During his 54-day stay in jail, he planned a scam which later came to be known as the Portugal banknote affair. After being released from jail, Reis forged a contract in the name of the Central Bank of Portugal, Banco de Portugal. Then he posed as a representative from the bank and convinced a London-based company that the bank had authorized him to print his own banknotes. Reis further claimed that the money they were going to print was part of a secret project and that it would be used to financially aid a struggling Portuguese colony, Angola. So note the link between charity and some of these scams. Right, so a lot of times a scam artist will be attached to some sort of a charity. According to Reis's instructions, the London-based company printed an equivalent of 1,007,963 euro of banknotes. The notes were then circulated into the Portuguese economy. In June 1925, he created the Bank of Angola and Metropole to help Angola. Did you catch that? He created a bank. Okay? Have you ever thought your bank was a scam? I bet you haven't thought that. Hey, not even the banks are safe, guys. So he created a bank, right? And he thought that controlling interest, he went on to buy controlling interest in the Bank of Portugal. Following and he hoped he would be able to successfully hide his scam by doing that. So he made so much money that he tried to take over the whole economy to hide what he did. The low interest rates of the Bank of Angola and Metropole piqued the interest of journalists, and they raised questions, right? Finally, the Bank of Portugal noticed the banknotes with duplicate serial numbers, and Reis's scam was exposed. 5 years later, he was sentenced to 20 years in jail. Okay, so they don't play in Portugal. In 1920s, this is number 7, Ivar Kruger, who owned banks, film companies, newspapers, mines, telephone companies, and railways, decided to form a monopoly to control all the world's safety matches. International banks begged him to let them invest, not knowing that his many companies existed only on paper, profitable only because they were invested in each other. So that's where have you ever heard the term robbing Peter to pay Paul? That's where you're paying off this note with this other note over here, which is paid off by this note up here, and it's just this paper trail. But at the end of it, it's a dead end. There's nothing there. The Swedish civil engineer Ivar Kruger began his career by helping in building New York Plaza Hotel and other landmarks. Okay, so that he was a legitimate business person at that point. After gaining experience, he opened a company in Sweden in 1908. His company soon became the best construction firm in Sweden. Then Kruger took over his father's match business. In 1917, he founded the Swedish Match Company. In the post-Depression era after World War I, Kruger began to acquire matchmaking factories around Europe. So he was like going to be the match kingpin, right? In 1925, Kruger began offering loans to insolvent countries at a bargain that was hard to refuse. So he wasn't loaning to just everyday people. He was making loans to actual countries. So that's big money talk that he was doing. Okay, he would also provide loans to countries that offered him a national monopoly on match production. So in trade for this loan, you give me the national monopoly on match production. Using his skills, he increased the sales in the country. Since the governments taxed matches, the increase in sales would increase tax revenues to repay the loans. By 1931, the Swedish Match Company controlled 250 factories in 43 countries. But his empire collapsed during the Great Depression. On 12 March 1932, he committed self-ending, because I can't say that word on YouTube. Hopefully I don't get taken down because I said it earlier. But he committed self-ending by shooting. Okay, the death of Kruger led to the Kruger crash. It hit investors and companies all over the world, especially in America and Sweden. After his death, Kruger's forgery of Italian bonds amounting to 142 million was found out. In Sweden, Kruger owed more than the country's national debt. As a result, the self-deletion rate, that's another word for you-know-what, the self-deletion rate increased in Sweden and the prime minister fell. In America, his shares collapsed, taking with it the life savings of thousands of people. So what was behind all of that? Forgery. Now, today, it's a lot harder to, forge documents, but not impossible. Okay, forgery still happens. And in the digital landscape, like I say to you guys on here, digital is the wild, wild west. So you got to be cognizant of this stuff. You got to be able to do your research. And in doing so, hopefully you realize that not everything is a scam. And some things are actually great opportunities, whereas other things, that might look like a scam and you might not want to deal with it. But gaining the knowledge is the important piece, and that's why I'm doing this session. So number 8, Nigerian scammer Emmanuel Wade once sold a fake airport to a major international bank for $242 million, and the scam wasn't discovered until 3 years later. How do you do that? Right? He must have just been rocking the paperwork. Let's see what he did. Emmanuel Wade is a Nigerian fraud artist who was formerly the director of Union Bank in Nigeria. If you notice, a lot of these people have a big corporate background. So they know the loopholes, they know the ins and outs of the system, which is what makes a lot of these scams seem so plausible. Okay, in 1995, he defrauded a Brazilian man, Nelson Saguchi, who was the director at the Brazil's Banco Nordeste. Wade began his scam by impersonating the then governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Paul Ugwama. So he was impersonating the governor, posing as the governor. He convinced Saguchi to invest in a new airport located in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. In exchange, he asked for a $10 million commission. So he knew the name of the game. He knew the rules of the game. He just came up with a fake asset, and he wanted real commission, right, based on the sale of that fake asset. And at the same time, he posed as somebody else in order to do that. The fraud remained undetected until 1997, when a Spanish bank decided to take over the Banco Nordeste in Brazil. When an official from the Spanish bank inquired about the large sum of Nordeste's money, which was sitting in the Cayman Islands unmonitored, it led to a criminal investigation. It was found that Sagachi had paid $242 million in between 1995 and 1998 to Emmanuel Wade, who promised him an airport, which actually never existed, and they don't say whatever happened to the scam artist in this case. Number 9. When Count Victor Lustig discovered that the famous Eiffel Tower was in need of repairs, he faked some government papers and sold the tower to scrap metal dealers twice, with a total of over $200,000 in bribes to throw the multi-million-dollar contract their way. So this is a construction scam, and let me just kind of go let me translate this into regular people language. Basically, it's when you say, hey, I've got a big construction deal coming up, and I've got a lot of contractors who are bidding on this deal. How much is it worth to you for me to give you this deal? Right? I've got all these contractors that I could give it to. What will you give me? Right? And that's where the bribe comes in. I'm asking for a bribe so that I give you this deal, which will be very, very lucrative to the tune of millions and millions of dollars. That's a construction scam, and that's what this guy was doing. Let's get into it. Victor Lustig began his con man career through a money printing machine. The machine would produce a counterfeit bill of $100. His client would buy the machine for a high price, believing that it would provide them with huge profit in the future. But the machine would produce $100 bills only for the next 12 hours, after which its supply became exhausted, resulting in blank notes. By the time the person realized the scam, Lustig was long gone. Right? So that's interesting. What he did was he made a machine, and he said, hey, this machine will print you $100 bills. And so you test it, and you see that it prints out the $100 bills, but actually it's only filled with a certain amount. So you purchase it with whatever large sum of money, thinking that you'll continually be able to print $100 bills. So basically he was scamming a scammer. And he got their money, he got out of Dodge, and then after they printed for a while, it would run out. Right? So that's how he did that. And here's what happened with the Eiffel Tower scandal. Lustig's sale of Eiffel Tower began in 1925 when he read about a repair and maintenance of the tower in a newspaper. He invited 6 scrap metal dealers, there's the construction companies, and posing as a government official said that the Eiffel Tower would be taken down. He then asked them to submit a bid and finally secured a deal with one of the dealers. For finalizing the deal, scrap dealer Andre Poisson offered a large bribe and secured the deal. And, you know, we talked about dishonesty, guys. Unfortunately, this happens in the construction business. I mean, bribes happen in a lot of business, right? So I know a lot of you guys are very moralistic, and I am that way myself. I was very moralistic, especially as a younger man, but a lot of times it's a dirty world, guys. So let me get back to this. After receiving the money, Lustig went away, and Poisson was too embarrassed to lodge a police complaint. So he knew he knew that he got scammed, and he was embarrassed by it. So he didn't lodge a complaint. A month later, Lustig returned to Paris and repeated the same trick. But the second victim did go to the police, and Lustig evaded arrest. So Lustig was gone, nowhere to be found. Last but not least, number 10. From 1997 to 2002, over 4,000 people paid an advance fee in order to receive new cars at a fraction of their value. The cars supposedly came from the estate of a wealthy Christian man according to his will. The scheme took in over $21 million, but neither the deceased, his alleged will, an estate of any kind, or the cars ever existed. Right? So this is a Christian scam, and this happens a lot, right? All you have to do is turn on the TV, and you can see that there's a lot of scam artists who take advantage of people's Christian faith in order to enrich themselves. The miracle car scam began with a story circulated by a man named Robert Gomez, who claimed that he was the adopted son of John Bowers, a wealthy executive of a food company. 3 years later, just before Christmas, Bowers claimed that claimed in his church that he is now the heir of Bowers' estate, which is valued at $411 million. So he said this at church. He also said that Bowers had instructed in his will that a fleet of 16 luxury cars would be given to fellow believers as a gift. Okay, you ever heard that, God give me a Cadillac? Right, that's a popular prayer in some circles. You know, God give me a Cadillac. The beneficiary needed to pay an amount of roughly $1,000 to $1,100 as a conveyance fee for each vehicle. So hey, you're getting a free vehicle, right? I just need $1,100 so that we can get the vehicle taken from his estate and transported to you. So we're going to transport the vehicle. I need $1,100. You know, obviously this is a free gift to you, and that's how he collected those payments. The news spread through word of mouth, and many church members showed interest in the deal. People started depositing the conveyance fee, and in the course of 4 years, from 1997 to 2002, 4,000 people deposited an advance fee. So let's do the math on that real quick. So let's say they deposited the $1,100. And he got that done 4,000 times. Okay, so 4,000 times 1,100 equals a ton of money. This is a scientific calculator. So, but you know, wow. Okay, let's get back into the article. The news spread through word of mouth, and many church members showed interest in the deal. So 4,000 people deposited the advance fee. The staggering number of car sales aroused suspicion, and an investigation was launched. Investigators found out that a man called John Bowers, as described, never existed, and neither did his estate or cars. It was also revealed that in 2002, Gomez, along with his accomplice, had collected, here it is, here's the number, $21.1 million from people. In 2003, he was sentenced to 21 years and 10 months in federal prison. And the thing about Fed time, guys, is you don't get good behavior time. You don't get any, like, you have to serve a certain amount of that 21 years. So it might be like a mandatory 18 years or something like that, which, man, that's a heavy-duty sentence. And the thing is, a lot of scam artists are still out there doing their thing, right? And many of these people never do get caught. Now, basically, the reason why I wanted to go over this with you is, one, it's entertaining, right? Just to see how different scams have happened. And then two, it's also to give you knowledge, give you powerful knowledge about what a scam is and what a scam isn't. At the end of the day, here's the conclusion. Any company that you're thinking about joining, do your research and make up your own mind. Because there's always going to be people who say everything is a scam, no matter what. Take any company, write the word scam next to it, and Google search it. And you'll get a ton of websites declaring that company a scam. Write in Walmart scam. Let's see, write in Bank of America scam. Right? What's another big company? Write in Tesla scam. Right? Any company who's out there, who's well known, it gets called by people, it gets called a scam. So a lot of people just want to run around out there and say that everything's a scam and just throw shade and throw hate. And unfortunately, that's just the way that the world is. A lot of people are just haters, right? And the funny thing is, like, scams are when you make stuff up, right? When you make up phony stuff to deceive people. And these people are making up phony stuff about these companies that they're calling scams. So it's just a whole, a whole laundry list of falsehoods. So I said all that, guys, to say this. Listen, man, do your own research, right? Do your own research. Dig into it. Know what you're getting into. Have an entry plan and an exit plan. Okay? And as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. That was the 10 biggest scams in history and the definition of a scam. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.